When most of us think about esports, we just picture people playing video games, right? Maybe for a lot of money. But what if it's way bigger than that? What if what we're actually watching is the birth of a new kind of digital civilization? A whole culture being built from the ground up, all on the foundation of play.
This quote really it nails it. It's such a powerful idea, isn't it? That something as simple as playing a game can trigger this massive chain reaction that eventually rewires the world we live in. And if you want to see just how wild that change has been, look at this. On the left, you've got the grand prize for the first ever video game tournament back in '72, a year's subscription to Rolling Stone. Cool, right? But on the right, the prize pool for a single tournament today is over $40 million. That's not just growth. That is a fundamental shift in what our society values as skill, as entertainment, as a real profession. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to trace the journey from dusty arcades to sold-out global arenas. Then, we'll dive deep into the mind of a professional player. After that, we'll follow the money and explore the culture. We're also going to bust some common myths and face some hard truths. And finally, we'll look ahead to the future of competition itself.
Okay, first up, arcades to global arenas. So how did this happen? How did a pretty niche hobby, something you did in your basement, transform into this global spectacle watched by hundreds of millions of people?
Well, this timeline really shows the crazy acceleration. Things start slow in 1972, but the 90s, that's where things get interesting, with the LAN party era. If you're not familiar, LAN stands for Local Area Network. Back then, dial-up internet was way too slow, so gamers would literally haul their huge, heavy computers to a friend's basement or a rented hall just to play together. But the real explosion, that happens in 1997 in South Korea. After a huge financial crisis, their government made this massive bet on high-speed internet. This led to the rise of PC banks, gaming centers that became the social heart of a generation, and the perfect breeding ground for pro gaming. Then, boom, 2011, Twitch launches, and that changed everything all over again. Suddenly, anyone could stream their gameplay to the world, turning players into celebrities and building these huge global communities almost overnight.
So that's how the industry got so huge. But what about the people at the very center of it all? Let's get into the mind of a pro and see what it takes to be a digital athlete.
And this is the question you always hear, right? Are they real athletes? I mean, they're just sitting in a chair pressing buttons. Well, when you look at the science behind what they're doing, the answer gets pretty interesting.
The secret here is something called the flow state. You've probably felt it before, that feeling of being completely in the zone where time just disappears. For an esports pro, this isn't some random accident. It's a skill they train like a muscle. Their brain literally learns to shut down the part that's responsible for self-doubt and overthinking, which lets them react at speeds that feel absolutely superhuman.
And look, this just shows you how seriously this training is taken. You can forget that old stereotype of some kid alone in their basement. A modern pro has a support system that looks just like any other professional sports team. We're talking cognitive coaches, team psychologists, nutritionists, even physical therapists for things like repetitive strain injuries. They're practicing for more than 12 hours a day, trying to maintain over 300 actions per minute. This is a full-body, full-mind, absolute commitment. And all of that professionalism has built an absolutely massive industry around it. So now, let's dive into the billion-dollar game, the money, and the different cultures that have sprung up all around the world.
I mean, just look at this number. By 2026, the global esports market is expected to be worth over $5 billion. And that's not just people buying tickets. It's a massive economic engine, powered by huge media rights deals, corporate sponsorships, advertising, the whole shebang.
But here's the thing, esports is not a monolith. How it's seen changes dramatically based on where you are in the world. In South Korea, where it all started, pros are treated like national heroes, almost like intellectual athletes. But in the US, it's all about individual greatness, the player as a brand, an influencer, a maverick. And then in China, it's viewed through this lens of national power. These players are strategic assets in a global competition for digital dominance.
Okay, so we've seen the scale, the seriousness of it all. But with any industry that blows up this fast, a lot of myths and misunderstandings start flying around. So let's separate some of that hype from the hard reality.
So the biggest myth by far is that getting paid to play video games is just a stress-free dream job. The reality is, it's brutal. The pressure to perform leads to incredibly high rates of anxiety and burnout. In fact, the average pro career only lasts about 4 to 6 years. That's not just physical fatigue. The games are always changing, and there's always a younger player with faster reflexes right behind you, ready to take your spot.
Then you've got the old antisocial gamer stereotype. But for millions of people today, gaming is their main social space. Sociologists talk about third places. It's not home, it's not work, it's that crucial third place for community. And as a lot of those physical places have faded away, these digital worlds are where friendships are being forged and maintained, often across entire continents.
But beyond the myths, the industry is also dealing with some very real, very hard truths. Gender inequality and horrible harassment against female players are still huge problems. You have young players, some are just teenagers, who get locked into these exploitative contracts. And the whole system is basically controlled by the game publishers. They own the game, they own the league, they make all the rules, which creates these really complicated debates about player rights and who gets a fair share.
So, with all that in mind, where does this all leave us? Let's get to our final section, the future of competition. Where is this digital coliseum actually headed?
When you strip everything else away, the money, the fame, the tech, this is what esports really is. For all of human history, we've used games to simulate struggle, to practice strategy, and to learn cooperation. Esports is just the next step in that evolution. It's a simulation of human struggle, teamwork, and victory for a world that's becoming more and more digital every day.
And why that matters is because it's a mirror. It reflects some of our most basic human urges back at us. Our obsession with being the best, our deep-seated need to connect with a community, and our very modern, very real struggle to figure out how to live our lives in this space between the real and virtual worlds.
And that brings us to one last really provocative question. We are getting very close to a future where an AI can be trained to play any game perfectly, flawlessly. So in a world like that, what's the point of watching humans compete? What is the value we find in watching other flawed, emotional, brilliant, but ultimately imperfect people strive to win? That's the question esports is forcing all of us to think about.